Good morning. Hi, I'm Maurice Jones, President of Graceland Ministries. Today, we're going to be sharing with you how to align your Bibles. Now, you might be saying to yourself, what are you talking about? What do you mean align my Bible? What I'm talking about is this. It's taking the Bible's history and aligning it with secular history or the human time frame. For example, we can say that Jesus was born during the time of Caesar Augustus, who we know who was Octavius. So, the best thing to do is, when you're trying to align your Bible, is you have to go to a certain Bible verse. And that Bible verse is 1 Kings 6:1. But before we do that, I got two examples of why it's important to align your Bible. One is from the Bible. It's a story about the Samaritan woman. She came to Jesus and she realized that, hey, he is a prophet. So she said to him, she said, "Sir," she wanted to know, where's the proper place of worship? She goes, "You Jews, you worship in Jerusalem. We worship on this mountain." She's talking about Dan and Bethel. Now, why did this woman have this question? She had this question because King Jeroboam, the first king of the north, told the people of Israel a lie. He didn't want the people to worship in Jerusalem. So he set up two worship centers, one in Dan and one in Bethel. And he convinced them to do this because he told them that when the people of Israel came out of Egypt, they built a golden calf. And that was a good thing. And so since people didn't know their history, they didn't know that was an evil thing, they built these two worship centers. And so here 900 years later, okay, this lady is still confused about where to worship. And Jesus had to tell her, he said, look, you worship, but you know not what. And he says, God is spirit, and those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So let's look at 1 Kings 6, verse 1. Now, if you don't have your Bibles, run and get them, because as you're doing that, I'm going to read these verses, okay? 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1. It says, Solomon began to build the temple for the Lord in the 480th year after the Israelites came out from the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of his reign over Israel, in the 2nd month, in the month of Zil. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 45 feet high. So we see here that Solomon became king of Israel in 971 BC. And in the 4th year of his reign, he's going to build the temple. And that puts us at 967. Now, why is that important? Because of this. When secular historians do history, one date that they have to agree to is 967. Another date that secular historians love to hold on to is 3500 BC. That's the reason you see movies like The Mummy being made. They say 5,000 years ago, man did this or man did that. Why? Because according to a secular humanist or a secular historian, after evolution, when man began to become civilized in Mesopotamia in about 3500 BC, and then they say in 3200 BC in Africa, we have that civilization. Of course, we move to the Indus Valley, and then we move to the He River, the Yellow River, and you get your 4 civilizations. But secular historians, they start with 3500 BC as a time whereby they can accurately date things. So, in between 967 and 3500 BC is very important for us to know. So, we start with, again, 967 BC. We add 480 years to 967, and we get 1446. This is the time Moses led the people of Israel out of Egypt. Now, my second story is about a lady. She was so happy she was taking an evangelism class. And she was telling me about this. And I said to her, something I say to all people when I come across them, I always ask people this question. I said, in what year was the Exodus? Because most people either they do not know that year, or they think that Moses lived during the time of Ramses II at about 1290 BC, because that's what secular historians teach. But we know from Solomon that Moses did not reign with Ramses II. We know that Moses lived during the time of the Thutmose dynasty. Okay? Hence you get the word Thutmose. Moose, son of Thut. Moses, son of who? Exactly, he had no Thut. So we know that Moses lived we know he was born in 1526. That's something we're going to talk about later. But right now, between 967 BC and 3500 BC, the Exodus occurred at 1446 BC. Now, we have this date. We now add 430 years to 1446, and now we begin to see the time that Jacob migrated into Egypt. Okay? And we know our story in the book of Exodus picks up with Joseph already being in Egypt during the time of the Hyksos. Okay? These were a group of people who was reigning over Egypt until Ahmose came. And Ahmose came along and he took Egypt back over by way of the Egyptians. Of course, Moses is going to be born after that. Now, we have 1446 BC. We now have the migration of Jacob into Egypt. Now, all we have to do now is take the ages of Jacob and Isaac and Abraham, and we put them together, and now we know that Abraham was born in 2165 BC. So we know that Abraham actually lived about almost 1,000 or more years after the building of the pyramids. So we know that the pyramids were already built when Abraham went down into Egypt. Now, secular historians, once again, they stop at 3500 BC. But there's another group of people out there called cosmic humanists. And they believe that, they are very mythical. They believe that aliens put humans on this planet. And so they like to date things back to 10,000 BC. Now, we have no historical evidence of man living 10,000 BC according to the cosmic humanist view of aliens placing men here. Okay. Now, by the way, as a Christian, I'm just going to give you a little nugget here. If someone tells you that aliens put us on this planet, do not believe that, because it's not even philosophically possible. Okay. There's no way a being could put a being on this earth, because you would have to keep going all the way back to infinite regress. So it's not even philosophically possible. So we're not going to worry about that now. Let's deal with the secular dating and the Christian dating. So we now know that Abraham, 2165, Abraham is born. Now we have the Tower of Babel. So when you read the book of Genesis, what you should do is this. You should always read Genesis chapter 11 before you read Genesis chapter 10. Because in Genesis chapter 11, we see the Tower of Babel. Now, when we go back to chapter 10, we see that after the Tower of Babel, when God dispersed the people by way of their languages, when we see that, we see the people, they spread out into three groups. Now, prior to the tower, we have Noah. Now, from Noah all the way back to Adam, we call that AC time. We call that after creation, because we don't have a way to really date that. But really, the most important dates we need are the birth of Abraham, the time of the migration, the time of the Exodus, and the time of Solomon building the temple.
Thank you for listening to this video from Graceland Ministries. If you enjoyed this content and are interested in hearing more on this topic or other matters of biblical doctrine, Please visit our website or follow us on social media.